Hey Weiland and Dylan, today I'm going to show you how we're going to take this pile of parts and turn it into something that looks like that. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to show you my computer. Yours won't be quite that big. That's a little ridiculous big, but that's okay. I'm going to open that up and show you the main parts that are inside of it, and then that'll give you a better idea of what the parts are as we kind of put it together. So I'm going to crack that open. Okay, so here's what it looks like with the door off. You can see that this is the front of it. So this is the side that I've removed. Right there's the side. So here are the parts that we're going to be putting in. On the bottom is the power supply. That's what gives everything inside of the computer power. On the outside comes in the plug from the wall. And that's AC power, and then that translates power to DC power, which powers all the components inside the computer. Right there, that shiny silver is the heatsink for my CPU. So underneath that is where the processor is. And the processor plugs directly into the motherboard, which is this big circuit board in the back. That's the motherboard. So there's the motherboard on the bottom, the CPU right on top of that, and then this big heatsink on top of that to keep the processor cool. And then right here you can kind of see two lines of red. That's my memory, or RAM. And then down here is my hard drive. And then mounted up here where you can't really see it is where my DVD drive is. So it's really dark in there, but it's right here. Okay, so those are all the parts. And that's what we're going to be assembling today. And then, yeah, like I said, maybe just like a little bit about like what each part does. So we kind of talked about the power supply. That powers everything inside the computer. The motherboard is the main circuit board, which everything basically plugs into. It's kind of the medium for the brains of the computer, if you will. The processor, which is underneath this guy, is really the brains of the computer, and it's pretty amazing how small those things are and how much they can do. They process millions and millions of instructions per second. Pretty amazing how small those things are, and we'll get a better look at those later. So that's really the main brains of the operation. I didn't really touch on the video card, which is right here. It's really dark in there. Man, you can hardly see it, but you can kind of see this circuit board here. I didn't point that out earlier, but that thing's job is to basically display what's on your monitor to you. So it basically just displays everything for you. And for games, for gaming operations, the better this is, the higher quality, the better frames per second, and the better everything looks for you. So that's kind of what most gamers are interested in. They're interested in how good the video card is. But the processor is important for that too. And then RAM, so the memory, the RAM here, RAM stands for random access memory. Memory's job is it's the place where all of the programs live while they're running. So basically the processor will start the program and it loads it into RAM. And everything that processes inside of RAM. So if you don't have enough RAM, the problem is that you have to spit that out to your hard drive, and that's called swap. It'll swap out to hard drive, and the hard drive is super slow compared to RAM. So the RAM's main job is to process all your programs super fast. We like RAM. We don't like hard drives for processing. And then the hard drive, I was pointing up there, that's my CD drive, but the hard drive is actually down here, so I should have been pointing there. So the hard drive's main job is to store data when the computer's turned off. Everything that's in RAM disappears every single time you turn your computer off, and then that's called volatile memory. This is a form of non-volatile memory in that when you turn your computer off, everything is still stored there. So you store your music, your videos, your favorite videos, whatever type of data you have on your hard drive, your program files, that's all stored in your hard drive, and then when the processor wants to fire up a program, it'll load all of that from here into memory, and then everything runs here. So the main job of the hard drive is to store data, and then CD-ROM, the CD-ROM, DVD-ROM drive, basically the only job of that is to take data that's on a CD or DVD drive and stuff it down on the hard drive. If you have like a music CD that can play up here and it'll just run into the the motherboard and process from there. But that's basically it. That's what everything does. Let's go put this thing together. All right, so the first thing I did is I opened up our case. This is your case, and every case comes with a box of hardware. And the first thing I want to do is I want to put these things called standoffs in there. You can see that they're meant to screw into the bottom of the case and just keep the motherboard off of the bottom by that little bit right there. And so the case is built for all sorts of motherboards. Not sure which motherboard you might be buying when you're a case manufacturer, so you just have to make sure that you put your standoffs in the right spot. And I do that by just taking the motherboard out of the box, and I see where the holes are. And I kind of set it in there and then visually see which ones I need to put standoffs in. So that's what I've done so far. I've gone ahead and put all these standoffs in, so the motherboard's ready to go in. So that's the first step. And then next, what we'll be doing, I like to mount the CPU before I put it inside of the case just because it's easier to work with. So the next thing I'll be doing is opening this up and putting the processor inside of it. Okay, so I've opened up the cover for the CPU, and this little thing, that's how thin it is, that's the heart of the computer that can process all those instructions per second. That's how tiny that thing is. So you really want to make sure that you get those in there the right way, or you will break pins and ruin the CPU. And the CPU is one of the most expensive parts of the computer, so you want to make sure you get in there right. And you can see on this particular CPU, where's my pointer? You can see that there's these little round pegs, one on each side. And that's the unique part about this CPU. Usually the CPU and the motherboard hatch will have, I guess I'll just lay this down here so we can get a look at it. Normally they will have a gold arrow, and there's only going to be one arrow. See, none of the other corners have that. And normally the motherboard will have an arrow painted in one of the corners. This motherboard doesn't. They cheaped out a little bit, but what they decided to do is each of these corners has a sharp point, and if you look real close right down there, they kind of made this one, let's get a focus there, they made this one at a 45-degree angle. So I guess that's the way that they kind of denoted that that's how we're going to point. So the correct way to put this CPU in would be just like this with the golden arrow down in the lower left-hand corner. So I'm going to open this up, I'm going to drop it into place, and then I'll close the cover and we'll take a look at that. Alright, so that's with the CPU dropped in place. And then we're just going to go ahead and put our cover down. And if the CPU goes in place, when it goes in place the right way, it should just drop into place essentially. If it's not dropping into place, you definitely have it in the wrong way, but this all just kind of dropped in nice like that. So the next part will basically be just taking this lever here, and I'll be forcing it down, and that'll kind of pinch this downward, and then we'll be putting the heatsink. Alright, so I've got it mounted inside the case. That's where we're going to be putting the heatsink, and I've got the heatsink right here, and I just kind of wanted to show the bottom of it. So this is the face that's going to go down and touch the CPU. I've got it upside down right now, and there's a plastic cover over it, so that's why I'm touching it, otherwise you wouldn't want to touch it. This gray stuff is called thermal paste, and that's what helps make a really good contact with the CPU to keep it cool so that you get good heat transfer up. And so that thermal paste is something you want to keep clean, so as you take this cover off and you're going to put this on, you want to make sure that you kind of center it where it needs to be. And you don't want to drop this on some cat hair and then just, whoops, I kind of dropped it, and then put it right back in. You'd have to clean that all off with rubbing alcohol and put new thermal paste on. But other than that, it's just flip it upside down and put it right there. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll be good to go. I've got the heatsink mounted. The next super easy thing to do is go ahead and put the memory in, or your RAM. The only thing you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure that you put them in the right slots. So that can seem kind of silly, but technically you could put this memory in any one of these 4 slots and life would be good. You can get a 10% performance gain though if you run in dual channel mode, which essentially it's just a way to get faster performance, and they actually color coded these, which is nice. But you can always refer to, and we will be referring to later, your handy dandy manual for your motherboard, just to verify which two slots you want to put your RAM in to make sure that you're using dual channel mode so you can get the fastest performance you can. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the two white slots. Technically we could use the two red slots if we like that color better, but it doesn't really matter. The way the memory slots work is there's these tabs that when they lock in place they'll be in this forward position. And you can see these outer two are in the outward position. So these two are ready to receive memory. I actually couldn't plug memory into these unless if I have them open, and they're individual here. I keep moving them both at the same time, but each one has its own thing. So we're just going to open them both up, and as we plug our memory in, they will automatically lock into place. Keyword automatically. So you don't have to do anything other than push evenly. The one thing we do want to make sure is that we line up this little notch with this piece right here, so you can't have them backwards. This is the way they need to go in. So I'm just going to go ahead, line that up, and then hopefully you can see the two tabs as I start to push down, they'll lock into place. Being fussy. There's one side, I heard it click, and there's the other side. Okay, do the same thing with the other one. Line it up, yep, got everything open, so we're good to go. So we're just pushing down evenly. Okay, that side went, this side's still being fussy. Okay, good to go. And I'm just going to lock these even though they don't need to be, but it looks cleaner. There we go, we got our memory installed in dual channel. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the power supply in so that we can start giving power to the motherboard, and eventually when we put our DVD drive up here, hard drive, etc., start giving our power to our components. So this actually will be going in just the way that it's sitting here, and it'll be going in right in like that. So I'll put it in there, and then there's a couple screws from the back side. Kind of do this one-handed-ish. Not sure that we need to, but so that's kind of where it goes. So I'll be fitting that in and putting the screws in from the back side. Okay, so now that we've got the power supply screwed in down there, I want to start plugging all of these wires that are coming from the case. So you can see that these are all just part of the case, this one down here as well, and then I've got fan cables over there. I want to start plugging these into the motherboard where they belong. So if you take a look at these up close, and if it actually focuses, you can see that the one on the right says HDA for high definition audio, and the one on the left says USB. The good thing about putting together motherboards is that everything kind of has a unique pin out. So you can see this one down here, the lower left one doesn't have a pin in, so it's kind of a unique pattern. And then if you take a look at the HD audio, you can see that it's, oh, this one over here and the one in from the left hand side is kind of blocked there too. So it's kind of like just putting together Legos, really. I mean, a lot of this may look complicated, but really there's only one spot where these things can go. So the tricky part really is figuring out where to plug them in, and again, the motherboard manual, really this thing is not scary, super useful. And as you scroll through here, if you kind of page through here, they'll tell you where all this stuff is located. So like right here, you know, they'll start telling you, hey, here's your header information. They give you a picture of the motherboard here and circle where you plug that in. So this one that says USB would be going there. I actually had to look up where the audio was. That was on this page, and that's hiding way over here. So as you look kind of in here, things are also kind of nicely labeled. I saw USB right away, so I knew that I was going to be plugging our USB in there. And then that HD audio, after I looked in the book where it was, I noticed that down in there it does say 7.1 HD audio. So that's kind of where we're plugging those things in. So I'll do that once I shut the camera off. And then this kind of other cable that's coming from the case, this is what I call the odds and ends cable. So this always has, like, you can see that there's the power switch, on the left there the reset switch. So these all run to your power switch and your reset switch, and they won't do anything unless you've got these plugged in the correct way. You can also see there's an HDD LED that stands for hard drive LED. So you usually probably see a light blinking on a computer when the hard drive is being read or write to. That's what this is doing. It's just the motherboard will tell you when it's doing that, so you can kind of see when the hard drive is being used. Some other odds and ends here. We've got a power LED, so when it's on, you know, when the computer's on, have a light show up. And then you've got a power LED negative and positive there. So I'll get these all plugged in. The odds and ends always, they typically have multicolored areas, and this is super hard to read, but the motherboard manual does a good job pointing out which pins you'll be plugging in there. So I'll basically be plugging in those there. And then the only thing left to plug in are these fans. You've got one at the top to take the heat out, and you've got one in the back to push the heat back. All of the fans always have the same kind of plug. It's this, that's all it is. They all look the same. Sometimes they're white, sometimes they're black. Trying to get it to focus here. Come on. Well, anyway, it's not that exciting. Where they plug into, those always look the same too. They always have this little backboard, if you will, so I'm kind of looking at one right about here. Right there is where I'm looking at one. So they always have that little backboard so that you plug it in the right way. And then if I could actually focus on this, worth a darn. It's kind of like a female-male connector, and you can see that I've got two teeth hanging down there at the bottom. That fits in like so. So I'll just be plugging all those in, and then from there on we'll add some more stuff to it. Alright, I plugged in everything I said I'd plug in. Down here was our odds and ends cable, USB, and then over here you can kind of see I've got the HD audio. I did plug in one of the fans here, and also one of the fans goes all the way down here, up and around the corner to right there. So everything's plugged in. You can kind of see that I've routed cables a certain way. I've zip tied one here so that this cable slack stays up out of the way. One of the things you want to do, if you can, this is kind of a pro tip, if you will, is keeping cables out of the way so that you get more airflow from front to back. The more cables and stuff that are in the way, the less air can move, the hotter your case runs, the hotter your components run, and they don't last as long. So zip ties are a super good way to keep things out of the way. And then one other thing I wanted to show you guys, this is really different. I've never seen this before, but each one of your fans has this like cable hanging out of it. And what it is, if you look close, it's a switch that has low, medium, and high. So you can choose how high you want to run them. I'm going to set them both at medium. If you ever feel like you want to crank up your speed on your fans, you want to really run your case cooler, crank it up to high. I'm going to just go medium for now so that it's not quite so loud for you. But these will kind of just be hanging in here. And if you guys ever want to change that speed, you can just change that switch. And then this one back here has one as well. So it's currently on low, so I'll flip that to medium. Rock and roll. Alright, so the next step is going to be taking all of the cables from the power supply and now giving the motherboard power. So we're going to plug in all these power cables into basically right here and right there. And then the motherboard will have power for all of its components and share it out that way. So that'll be the next step. Alright, okay, I've added the power cable to the motherboard here and then up there as well. As you can see again, I tried to route things around so that they're staying out of the way, and then at the very end I'll zip tie things together and snug them out. We're really close to being done now. Next I'm going to put the CD drive and the hard drive in. CD drive will be up here, hard drive will be down here. We'll get those mounted, and then we'll be plugging the data cable and the power cable in, so we'll need to get them power, and we also need to be able to allow them to send data to the motherboard. So we'll hook that up later. Alright, you can see I've got the hard drive mounted down here. I've got the DVD drive up top. And so next we want to get data and power to both of those devices. Your power supply comes with all sorts of extra cables. Both of these take SATA. So this is kind of a big long cable with 1, 2, 3, 4 of them all together. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of hook them up so that the top one's down here, and then we'll stretch all the way down. We'll plug that one into the hard drive. So we'll power them both with one cable. So that comes with your power supply. It gives you all sorts of power cables. And then your motherboard comes with data cables. So then we'll be plugging each of those, one into each one of those, and then plugging into the motherboard there for data. So the data goes across these cables, and each device is going to be powered by this cable. So I'm going to hook that up and get that rocking, and then really all that's left is the video card, so we're almost done. Alright, I've got the data cable connected there, and the power cable's behind it. The data cable's the orange one, power cable's the multicolored one, and then the same for the hard drive down below. So they're all connected, ready to go. I did do a little cable management here. You can see there's a lot of cables tucked around the corner, and I've got a zip tie there. I have a zip tie that at the end I'll tighten up here. Only thing left to do is go ahead and throw this bad boy in. Here's your video card. It's a 650 Ti NVIDIA. NVIDIA, I like their drivers. They're typically better drivers, especially if you guys ever decide to run Linux, that's for sure. This is a really good card. I think you guys will be really pleased with it for quite a while. We do want to point out that there's two PCI Express slots, so technically it could go in either of these. I was originally going to put it in this red one just because it's down lower and I wouldn't get it tucked up so tight against all of this, and I'd have a little bit more room. I did reference the handy dandy motherboard manual. Always come back to that. And unfortunately, this is 3.0 compliant. And this one is only 2.0 compliant. So technically, I mean, we could still put this in either slot. You'll just get better performance out of that slot. So I'm going to go, I've already cleared out the two slots here. It's a big boy. It's a double slot video card, so I've got both of those cleared out. I'll basically be plugging that in there. And then the motherboard, or the video card does require a power cable, which I'll be plugging in right here, so that'll have to get plugged into the power supply too. And once that's in, and it will be reverse mounted like that, that's the way that it'll go in. Once that's in, this computer is ready to rock. We're going to throw some software on there, and you guys are going to be gaming in no time. So, very cool. Alright, let's throw it in. Video card thrown in, you can see it right there. He's connected with the power right there, which goes down around. It's all routed, and I've got all my cables pretty tied in the way that I want. So this is a fully completed computer. Everything's in there. I'll put the sides on. We'll get a look at what it looks like all put together, and then I'll start putting some software on it. You guys will be good to go. Very exciting. All right, and here's what it looks like put together. The front of the case is really cool, actually. I like it a lot. I really like the just like the really sleek, like flat look. So that's pretty cool. Your DVD drive I put all the way at the top. I mean, we could move it down here, but I think that looks funny. I think you always want that up top. You got your USB ports here that you can plug into and use if you want to. Power buttons here. The reset button I thought was kind of goofy. It's so this is the way the power switch looks. The reset button is right in between these two things that don't move. So if you need to reset, you're really gonna have to work for it. But you definitely won't hit that. I mean, they made it that way so you don't accidentally hit it. Well, you definitely won't accidentally reset it. That's for sure. And then one thing I wanted to point out as we kind of roll to the back here. So this is where the motherboard comes through the back. So this is where you'll be plugging in your speakers into the green circle. I put plastic covers over all of the video ports here. There's an HDMI, DVI, and VGA. You don't want to use these anymore. This is the integrated video that's on the motherboard. And you guys have a really nice, powerful video card right down here. And that's what we want to use. So I was really lucky those plastic covers came on this video card, and I took them all and I covered up all of these so you don't accidentally plug them in here. So you want to make sure you're plugging in your monitor down here. So if you have a DVI port, which is probably most likely, it'll be this guy. This is kind of an old school connector. I doubt you'll have that. And then if you have an HDMI port, it'd be that one. So make sure you're plugging in your video down here. Go ahead and plug your audio in there, and then here's your network cable for at home for your internet, and then your USB, and rock and roll. Should be good to go. There's more USB upstairs if you need it. So I think you should be good to go. I'm gonna go throw some software on this. All right.